Um, all right. Okay, we are live. I am here with Chris Stevenson again. Here today, every Wednesday, we're going to be talking about best practices, interviewing live with the experts in the fitness industry. My name is Stacey Alden. I oversee this channel, and again, I'm so excited to be here with Chris. We are here to talk about today 6 ways to maximize feedback. And in the fitness industry, I know we need to always be striving to ask for feedback from our members, from our instructors. And Chris and I have talked about this before when it comes to your own employees, but let's talk about maximizing feedback from our members and our participants. Before I begin with that, I want to introduce Chris. He is a previous former Power Ranger stuntman turned gym owner, Stevenson Fitness for many years, and then took his expertise, his knowledge, I call him the service guru of the fitness industry, who has taken all that knowledge and that experience and made it into a consulting business. So his Stevenson's Empowers consulting business is what has brought him here today as a professional in the industry who presents at conferences all over the world. Maybe not right now because we're still in the midst of COVID-19, but I've seen him at conferences online almost every other week. So I'm so happy to have him here today. He is great. I'm so grateful for his time. He's so willing to give up his time, and I appreciate that. But he now is also a big endeavor I don't want to forget is his new business in founding Be Military Fit in California. So I really look forward to hearing more about that. It's an outdoor fitness experience, and it comes from the UK, and it is Bear Grylls. It started it too. So excited to talk more about that as that gets going. But today, Chris, the first question I have for you is, even though, as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a silly question, we know feedback is important, but I'll admit, reaching out to members and participants for feedback, why is that so important in the fitness industry?
So I'll explain it this way, because like you said, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, obviously, the more feedback we get from our members, the more we can provide the experience they're looking for. The second part is simply giving members a voice shows your members that you appreciate them and that you care what they think and that you care what they say. So that's kind of twofold. But I think to drive the point home, I'll share a quick little story. I had a trainer who worked for me many, many years ago, and he had come to our location from a location that was in Beverly Hills. So it was in a very nice area in California. The gym that he worked at was a dump. There were broken mirrors, bad lighting. You know the old metal dumbbells that when you clank them together, like you'd worry that the flakes would fall? Well, you're too young, Stacey. You don't know that stuff. But my age, you have the dumbbells over there. You couldn't find clips. Weights were the different brands. It was dirty. It was dingy. Like everything about this club was terrible. The one thing, though, they did really well. And my friend trained there. He had a very high-end client base. You had a lot of celebrities come and go in that facility. So the facility itself did really well, despite how poor it looked and what most of us would consider a bad experience. So the owner, having done well, said, you know what, I got to revamp this thing because we've done well. Let's make it awesome. So they rebuilt, and beautiful, wide open windows and better signage, absolutely meticulous, higher end equipment, better mirrors, better floor layout, better design. Like just made this place into an absolutely incredible facility. And he failed. And the funny part about that is the people that were coming when he was so busy loved it. They wanted the dirt. They wanted to sort of be anonymous. They liked kind of feel like I'm cool because I use this old school equipment. He never bothered to ask. So he made all these improvements, invested all this money, ended up crushing his own business. So the bottom line is kind of back to why we need this feedback is it's easy, especially us as experts and even meaning well. We assume that everybody wants the same things that we think they would want. And when we're in an era where surveying and getting information is so easy, you want to make sure that you're actually asking what they want. So you do provide that. Never make assumptions. One of the presentations I do quite often as a keynote is stop guessing and start asking what your members want.
Yes.
And that's the story that I kick that keynote off with every single time because, again, too many people think, I bet they want this. I bet they want that. Well, just ask them when you can. So again, that story kind of drives the point home that you get valuable data and feedback, which allows you to make better decisions to give people what they're really looking for. And you also let them know that they have a voice and that voice is important. So you respect and appreciate them as members.
That is so good. Such a great example too, because, oh my gosh, I'm definitely a culprit of that. assume things all the time. Like, oh, this is happening, so they must want this. And until you ask, it's amazing what you can
Right.
really learn. And so on that note, you have
Yep.
6 ways to facilitate understanding feedback, maximizing feedback. What are those 6 ways that you would share with us today?
So just kind of 6 tips that wrap all around that subject. But the first one is you want to advertise that you're doing surveys. I've had many clubs, and it's actually kind of comical, or personal training studios, and they're like, "Oh, we have, we did a net promoter study or net promoter score survey, and we had like a 99." And I'm like, "Well, how many members do you have?" And they're like, "Well, 50." And I said, "Well, how many responded to the survey?" And they're like, 5. I'm like, "Well, that's not statistically significant." So if you really want valuable data, right, you got to advertise to your members that, hey, we run these surveys. We really want you to participate. So you want to make sure that you drive people to the surveys so that you're getting enough data to make sure that it is real, statistically significant data and information. Because if not, of course, the 1 or 2 people who are always vocal are going to fill it out. No one else does. And then you end up making decisions based on a small sample size instead of what you need, which is the bigger sample size. And then also kind of going into the advertising piece, it really does differentiate you. So whether you're at a traditional club and you're touring a member, and as part of your sales process going, by the way, and I always recommend that you stop right in the middle of the tour and you're like, oh my, almost like you surprised yourself. By the way, we're going to survey you every 3 months because we value your opinions and want to make sure that you're happy with the experience here. So make sure once you're a member, you pay attention to those surveys and really fill them out and help us out. So, and sometimes we'll even, on the note with so it differentiates you as a club, because I guarantee the 5 other clubs they toured, nobody talked about that. Right. So like, wow, that is different. And in conjunction with that, there's nothing wrong with a little bribery. So when you really want information, just say, hey, everybody who fills out this survey has a chance to win this $100 Visa gift card, or, some sort of reward prize for doing so. So the first tip is just advertise it. Let people know it's out there. Let people know that you want them and encourage them to fill it out, and occasionally bribe them if that's your like, because bribery works really well. So the second feedback around surveys in general is you have to take action. And that doesn't mean, by the way, doing what people have requested or suggested, but it means either talking to them and explaining why you can't, or here's some alternatives, or wow, that's a great suggestion. I think we're going to see what we can do with that, right? So you have to take action. There's nothing worse than asking someone for their opinion and doing nothing. And that's with members and staff, right? If you're just going to lead like a dictator and that's your style and that's always worked for you, that's fine. Then don't ask your staff their opinions just because you feel like you should, right? So the second step is simply take action. And I know it sounds simple, but many people don't. And that makes it worse. Like, man, I filled out all these surveys and nothing has ever changed, or it's never been explained to me why it hasn't changed, but there's a good reason for it. So taking action. The third tip is, with this feedback, respond regularly. Especially if it's negative feedback. If somebody responds to a survey and says they had a bad experience, and you wait, they've probably already quit and it's too late. So you don't have to do this as a daily task, because that might be a little overwhelming based on the volume that you have. But what I would recommend is that 1 or 2 times a week, you have dedicated response time. And this is when you're going to respond to people who have been gracious enough to take your surveys. Now, obviously, if they're anonymous surveys, it's hard to respond to. But a lot of the surveys that I encourage people to do are not anonymous surveys, so you know exactly who you're dealing with, and you're able to respond. But imagine if I said, Stacy, and I sent you a survey right after this interview about me as a guest, and you said, wow, that's really cool, and you had some feedback for me, and let's say one was, I did not like the lighting. He keeps moving around and it shines on his head because he's stuck outside. And then I just never got back to you, right? And then maybe a month later, I finally respond, and you're like, well, I don't want you as a guest anymore because you asked me for feedback. I gave you some opinions. I thought they were, and you never got back to me, right? So you do need to respond regular and fairly close to when you get that feedback. Because again, if it goes too long, chances are people are disgruntled and have left. Personalized responses. Now, depending on what you use, this is the fourth tip, by the way, depending on what you do, some are automated. So for example, many of us do, and we've done this at our clubs, a net promoter score. And depending on if they're a promoter, passive, or detractor, they'll get an automated response. And that's just because you're managing a lot of data and it comes from that. So if you got a smaller facility, you can do that all manually, but they'll get that first one. But then after that, any response should be personalized. So if they
Yeah.
respond to the auto respond email, then you're reaching back out, and now you're in this great dialogue, which is a great way to engage with your members and have conversations. And again, it's not every request Stacy has, we will fulfill, but it's saying, Stacy, totally appreciate the fact that you wanted A, B, and C. Here's why that's not in our plan right now, but we will keep it in the back of our mind. A great one is the last club that we owned and operated was a smaller footprint club, even though it was full service, and there was just no room for a pool. I mean, literally, like, couldn't do it. Not like we chose not to do it, couldn't do it. Small, right? Well, we would still get people in our surveys that would say, I wish you guys would put in a pool. Now, it was impossible. So we would not even tell them, we'll keep that on our list. And at some point, because it's not possible, but it allowed us to create a dialogue, a very transparent dialogue saying, you know what, we appreciate that. We are unable to do it. However, we have two different schools. One is a high school and one's a local community or local college. And here's their open swim hours. Here's what open swim costs. So we gave them other options. We didn't send them to other clubs that had pools, but we found options that were not competitors with it that could be complementary. And we gave them that answer. So again, don't be afraid of surveys, because I hear that a lot. People are like, but if I survey and they tell me to do something, I have to do it. No, you either say, wow, that's a great idea. And in that particular straight up way or a modified way, we may run with this, or appreciate the feedback. Here's why it's not possible. And here's some alternatives. So that's the way you want to think about that. So you don't get intimidated by, I can do what everybody says. Right. And I will tell you, in my 20 some odd years of doing this sort of thing in our industry, I mean, once in a while you get somebody who's like, can't believe you won't do that. Goodbye. But mostly people are like, I get it. I appreciate it. And if you're giving them a great experience in general, they like you anyway. So they're like, you know what? I like you guys. I get it. That makes sense to me. They tend to be supporters in that way. The fifth one will be archive your data. Now, I've written several articles on a topic called real versus feel. And the whole concept of those articles and blogs, videos, is that base decisions on real, not on feel. It kind of goes back to that original story that we opened up with, right? Oh, I feel like this is a great idea. So you do it. And it's not. But real gives you the data to make better decisions. So you might have one loud member who comes in and says, I wish you had one more rower. And they're angry and they're mad and they're loud, and that impacts you and you freak out and you're like, we gotta get a rower like ASAP. But then you look at the data and all the survey stuff you've got, and more people had requested an extra recumbent bike, 10 to 1, right? But feel would say, get that rower and shut her up. I assume it was her. That's not fair. Or him, right? Shut her or him up. But in reality, you're going to help that one member who's just grumpy and loud and wants this one thing, versus if you looked at the data and the past survey responses, you realize, wow, there's 10 times the amount of people that have a recumbent bike. That makes a better decision. So when you archive that data, you can always, and we use a very fancy technology called Microsoft Excel, right? So it's that simple. Yeah, we list, this many people asked for this and this, and we have categories for it. So you can sort by those different columns, and it makes it easy. So then all of a sudden you got a budget for facility improvement. What do we spend it on? Let's look at what most people are asking for. That goes with Group X, with class changes. Again, don't let loud people and the people that constantly are jabbing at you, don't let them be the ones that force you into decisions, right? Let it be the actual data and research. So archive it, store it, and have that ready to go. So that way, hey, we've got a budget to do $10,000 worth of facility improvement. What should we do it on? Well, let's look at what people have requested the most. So that's very valuable. And then, of course, the sixth tip is marketing. So using our last club as an example, we only had one studio, tons of requests for spin. It was really hard to get enough bikes and to wheel them in and off. We didn't have a lot of storage space because of the boutique size. So we just couldn't really do it, but we kept archiving that data. And then what happened was I did a lot of work for Techno Gym, and we had this great opportunity with Techno Gym to launch their cycle program. And it was this integrated cycle program. So we were sort of one of their pilots, and it was an awesome experience. But we looked back at those archives and said, hey, by the way, you asked for it, you got it, and you're going to pay, right? So it was a fees-based service. So same thing, we didn't have any reformers or Pilates, but we started to have a lot of requests for Pilates. So what do? Create a paid small group mat Pilates program. So you can market stuff as well, right? It's not just about doing what people want, but it gives you the opportunity, depending on your model, to say, enough people requested this, we're going to do it, but it's going to be a fees-based program. So those 6 things will really help you maximize it, because simply doing a survey doesn't give you any results unless you take action, do those things. So again, you want to advertise, which is a differentiator because most clubs aren't doing it. You'll be surprised, so that you get enough response that it's statistically significant. You want to make sure that you take action. So that's, again, not giving everybody what they want, their base, but if not, simply explaining to other people, hey, here's why we can't do it, or here's some other options. Make sure you do it on a regular basis so it doesn't go too long, because then people get disgruntled and don't think you care or will respond. Personalized responses when possible. It's a great form of member engagement, builds a better relationship overall. Archive all the data you get to allow for those real versus feel decisions to be made more accurately. And then finally, market it. When you're adding new program based on suggestions and stuff you see in surveys, you can make that into paid programming.
I love all of those tips. Everyone, write notes. Those are so good. Because it's so true. Recently, I know a lot of us may be shifting in the policies and in the ability to open things up. And like you had mentioned, having the ability to take the feedback, reach out to the person who gave you the feedback, that you're listening, and then give yourself time to digest. That is so valuable. What and how and why you're even going to implement it, or let them know why you can't or can do it. And recently we've had to reach out to a few people, and you're exactly right. They've said, oh, that makes sense. You can't open up your parking garage right now because you need only one entry point for taking temperatures or doing other things. And it's like, I would have never thought of that. So people have been really receiving of that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that you bring up, especially given the times that we have now, with so much uncertainty and different policies and different standards we have to follow, and what make people feel safe to come back, and those sort of things. It's one of those. It's just, we assume, okay, if we make sure everything's 6 feet away, and we put out more towels and sprayers, and we put signs up, that'll make people happy. And by the way, you always want to do the right thing. But what if what was more important to them was an extra staff member on the floor handing out gloves or masks or whatever it is? Survey it. And I know Blair McCaney from MXM has put out a ton of free resources. If you go to his website, on different surveys you can participate and use. But again, especially in a time where we don't know, we think this is what people want us to do during COVID. Maybe they don't. Maybe they do. So as an example, California shut again. But when it opened temporarily, we were consulting with a local club. And when they were shut down, we put together with them a really good outdoor program. It was well organized and just set up. They did a really good job. When they got to open inside again, I said, keep the outdoor option right now, because even though you're allowed to be open, there will be people that still don't feel comfortable in indoor spaces. So they kept the outdoor. Fortunately, indoor closed. Not fortunately, unfortunately, indoor closed again, and they had kept it. So it wasn't a big pivot. But to go like, we're back indoors. Oh God, we got to go back outdoors. Bad member experience. So especially in times like now, getting people's opinions and knowing what's important to them, and understanding it might be different than what's important to you. We might think, again, we're fine going in with this as long as people are 6 feet away and wearing a mat. We're good. Your members think differently. They don't know the industry the way we do. They don't know how safe gyms are. We've seen that, right? So
totally. Yeah. And that's great feedback. I'll throw in the comments below Blair McCaney's MXM, right?
Yeah, I think it's just MX. It might be mxmmetrics.com, but yeah.
Yeah. I'll throw that in the comments so that people can look
resources.
at that. Good resource. Are there any other resources, Chris, you have as far as anything that people can use if they aren't doing anything to survey their members just yet or receive feedback yet?
Yeah, I mean, so, and I truly mean this. There are some really great companies like MXM, like TRP, like Listen 360, which are paid services. So when you get to doing this at a very serious level and you have a lot of members to manage, you're going to want to subscribe to one of those, right? It's just too hard to manage on your own. In the meantime, if you're like, man, I listened to Stacy and Chris and thought I should probably do some sort of surveying, SurveyMonkey. It's a very easy to use, handy tool to create some very basic surveys. It even has question writing tips, because that's the other thing. When you start doing surveys, it's very easy to unintentionally write slanted questions, right, that lead to a certain. So you want to make sure that you just Google how to write unbiased survey questions, and you'll get a lot of tips. I believe some of that's built into SurveyMonkey, but you just go into SurveyMonkey and create some basic stuff, respond on your own to the people that respond to that, and that's just a great start. You can do just Net Promoter, which is the 0 to 10, how likely you refer somebody, and the space for comments. SurveyMonkey does that, and that's a simple one because it gives you a number. It's very basic, easy to manage. Or maybe you're smaller and you a smaller studio that has a focus on only group training. you might want to create your own set of group training questions and send it to your membership base, right? And then you decide
Mhm.
better anonymous, better non-anonymous. Those type of things are things you want to take into consideration. But it starts simple. Sometimes people hear this, get
Yeah.
all fired up. Like, I'm going to start serving every department once a week. No, no, no. Just start simple. Try one
Yeah.
easy survey, free on SurveyMonkey. See the results. Learn to manage it. Learn to store the data, and then you can
Mhm.
slowly build that up into bigger, better stuff.
So good, so valuable. Thank you so much. And this is such a great time to, I think, take advantage of this. So if
Yeah.
you guys enjoyed today's video, please make sure to like the video and then subscribe to this channel, because I'm going to have multiple people, as I said, experts in the industry. I'm sure I'll have Chris back again. I have Marissa coming up in a couple weeks, and she's with Stevenson's Consulting as well. And I cannot wait to speak to her as well. So thank you
And
again, Chris.
Stacey,
Yeah.
really quickly, by the way, I thought of one last thing. We talk about how to get
Oh,
started.
sure. Yes.
Here's a very simple survey. Train your front desk. We call them welcome desk
Oh,
because we believe that's what
yes.
their job is. We shouldn't base their title on location, which is front. It's on what they do,
Mm-hmm.
welcome desk. But
Mm-hmm.
just train them when somebody's leaving to say, they're going to say, when are we going to see you again? Or see you tomorrow? Those type of things. So we want to create that feeling, come back. But before that, just say, hey, how was your workout today?
Love it.
Or you as a leader, stand up front and say, how was your workout today? That's a very simple, easy, immediate survey. And by the way, there's oftentimes people say it was great, and they're great, we'll see you tomorrow. Or they say, you know what? Actually, I saw somebody who wasn't following the guideline or this. So sometimes you can solve a problem just by that informal
Yes.
verbal survey. So it doesn't have to just be written. That's a survey, right? So a best
Mm-hmm.
practice like that, super easy to implement. And I would suggest that you try it.
That is so smart. So, so smart. Because, yeah. And then that's in real time. That's over time. You don't have to
Yeah.
wait for the 3-month period or whenever you're going to be sending out your survey. So, so, so
Yep.
good. I love that.
Catch them
Thank
in the
you so
moment.
much for that. And
My
thank you
pleasure.
again for being here. And we'll see you guys next time.
Anytime. See you again soon. Thank you.